Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritta Naram Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Diri Nashtavraya Shabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavatasya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhagavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, Volume 4, in every town and village around the world, 1968 to 1971. Chapter 31st, A Threat Against ISKCON. So in New Vrindavan, the sannyasis had preached that Prabhupada is Krishna and we have offended Prabhupada, this is not good, and so many different things. And Prabhupada's letter arrived in time. And Prabhupada said, please accept my blessings. And so Prabhupada hadn't rejected them. Then Prabhupada specifically referred to the difficulty facing ISKCON. Purge out of New Vrindavan the non-Vrindavan atmosphere that has entered. His letter turned the tide against the Mayavad teachings. The GBC then called a meeting of all disciples in the temple room. Reading selections from the Nectar of Devotion, they established that the spiritual master, although not God, should be honored as much as God because he is a confidential servant of God. Several senior devotees spoke their heart's convictions, citing examples from their association with Prabhupada to prove that he had not rejected them. He was too kind. The sannyasis might feel rejected because of their own guilt, someone said, but they should not project their guilt on others. The false teachings, however, had dealt a blow from which many devotees would need time to recover. Newcomers at the festival were especially unsettled but the cloud of gloom that had hung over New Vrindavan was lifted, thanks to Srila Prabhupada's timely letter. The sannyasis admitted the confusion. The GBC then phoned Kirtanand Swami in Tokyo and told him that Prabhupada's letter had resolved most of the problems, but that the sannyasis still had their misconceptions. Hearing this, Prabhupada felt his suspicions confirmed. Certain disciples had been contaminated by the poisonous philosophy from India. Consequently, material desires for power and control had overwhelmed them, even in Prabhupada's presence. See, it can happen with anybody. Sannyasis also, material desires for power and control had overwhelmed them. Sannyas definitely means going way beyond all these desires. But it's not that easy. Not at all. And especially when somebody is a sannyasi or in a leadership position, then Krishna's mercy, he gets plenty of chances to enjoy power, control, position, money, resources, other resources. He has plenty of opportunities. So, but one has to be like Prabhupada, who did not get deviated. He had nothing. When he was in India, how much he was struggling in Delhi. He used to go, distributing back to Godhead in the middle of the summer outside. And then when he went to America, again, he had hardly had anything. How much of a struggle he went through in New York, in Pennsylvania, other places. But then Krishna gave him so much. Even right now, he got London, he met Beatles, he got temples in London and so many temples all over USA, in Japan also. But he did not get deviated. He did not get affected by that success. That is desired. Turning to Tamal, Krishna, Sudama, and the three sannyasis with him, Prabhupada asked what they thought should be done. With the previous day's philosophic drilling still sharp in their minds, I suggested that anyone teaching Mayavad philosophy should not be allowed to stay within ISKCON. Prabhupada agreed. If these sannyasis continued to preach Mayavad philosophy, he said they should not be allowed to stay in his temples, but should go out and preach on their own. Still, Prabhupada is not kicking them out of ISKCON. Okay, they cannot stay in the temple, they should go out and preach. Tamal Krishna conveyed this message to the GBC in the US, and Prabhupada was satisfied that the problem would be adjusted. He had created his GBC to handle such matters. On September 2nd, Prabhupada wrote Hansaduta in Germany. Regarding the poisonous effect in our society, it's a fact, and I know where from this poison tree has sprung up and how it affected practically the whole society in a very dangerous form. But it doesn't matter. Prahlad Maharaj was administered poison, but it did not act. Similarly, Lord Krishna and the Pandavas were administered poison and did not act. I think in the same parampara system, that the poison administered to our society will not act if some of our students are as good as Prahlad Maharaj. I have therefore given the administrative power to the governing body commission. To Haigriva in New Vrindavan, Prabhupada wrote, I am very glad to know that the GBC is actively working to rectify the subversive situation which has been weakening the very foundation of our society. All you members of the GBC, please always remain very vigilant in this connection so that our society's growth may go on unimpeded by such poisonous elements. Your preaching in New Vrindavan as well as intensified study of our literature with seriousness is very much encouraging. Please continue this program with vigor and re-establish the solidity of our movement. From the beginning, I was against the impersonalists, and all my books are stressed on this point. So my oral instruction as well as my books are all at your service. Now you GBC consult them and get a clear and strong idea. Then there will be no more disturbance. The four sannyasis may bark, but still the caravan will pass. Prabhupada wrote Satsvarup in Boston. I'm very glad to know that you're not affected by the propaganda of the sannyasis, that I am displeased with all the members of the society. I'm never displeased with any member. The worst was over, Prabhupada thought. For months, this problem had upset him and his writing. Relentlessly, he had instructed his disciples for their own benefit and for the benefit of his movement. The disease had taken its toll, and that was unfortunate. But the devotees were being forced to turn to Prabhupada's books and apply their teachings, and that was a positive outcome. Now they should clearly understand the position of the spiritual master, never again be led astray by false philosophies or sentiment. Okay, so those sannyasis, I think I was wrong. Prabhupada said, let them go out and let them preach on their own. Means they had nothing to do with ISKCON. So not many devotees Prabhupada kicked out like this. Not many. Prabhupada, but these because they were following this Mayavad philosophy, and this is what Prabhupada was dead against. Prabhupada's main business in Tokyo was with Dainipan. Considering him an important author and a venerable religious monk, they had provided him a car and apartment. Each morning, they sent a private car to drive Prabhupada to Imperial Palace Park, where he could take his morning walk. Prabhupada liked the neatly planted trees and gravel walks, and he appreciated the habits of the Japanese people. As he would pass, elderly ladies would bow to him from the waist, and others would fold their hands respectfully, acknowledging his being a holy man. On the morning of Prabhupada's meeting with Dainipan, he came out of his apartment with Tamal Krishna and Devanand Maharaj and got into the back seat of a Dainipan company car. The car proceeded through the early morning streets, and Prabhupada chanted his Gayatri mantra silently. A Dainipan junior executive escorted Prabhupada and his two disciples into an elevator and up to a spacious room with a large conference table. Prabhupada's guide cordially offered him a seat at the table, and Prabhupada sat down with Tamal Krishna and Devanand Maharaj on either side. Soon there entered Dainipan's 6 top executives, including the corporation president. Each stood behind his respective chair, and each in turn, beginning with the president, bowed slightly from the waist and presented his calling card. Addressing Prabhupada as Your Divine Grace, they introduced themselves, announced their posts, and took their seats. We are very honored to have you here, the president began. You are a great religious author, and it was a great privilege to be publishing your books. After the president had spoken briefly, tea was served. Prabhupada requested hot milk. Conversation was informal, and Prabhupada spoke of the importance of his mission and his Krishna conscious literature. No one discussed business, however, and the Dai Nippon executives soon excused themselves. They would meet again the next morning. When Prabhupada was again alone in the room with his disciples and the junior executive who had escorted him, he asked the young Japanese, "So what is your goal in life?" By way of answer, the man gathered up all the business cards that lay scattered before Prabhupada on the table and stacked them, with the presidents on top, then the first vice presidents, and so on, putting his own card in its place on the bottom. He then dramatically removed his card from the bottom of the stack and slapped it on a topic graphic, slapped it on the top. A graphic example or graphic answer to Prabhupada's question means he wanted to be at the top. And this is a desire of every person working in a company. We all think that if we become the CEO or president of the company, I'll be very happy. Then we work hard to get to the top. But by the time we get there, then we realize happiness is not in all this positions and money and power. Happiness is actually in spiritual realization. But it takes a long time to come to that understanding, to that realization. Prabhupada smiled. To become president of the company, he said, was temporary. All material life was temporary. He explained on the basis of Bhagavad Gita that the body was temporary and that the self was eternal. All the identities and positions people hankered after were based on the bodily conception of life and would one day be frustrated. The purpose of life, therefore, was not to become the temporary president of a temporary corporation within the temporary material world, but to realize the eternal soul's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and gain eternal life. Prabhupada spoke for almost half an hour while the man listened politely. At the next day's meeting, negotiations began. The conference room was different, the table smaller, and three of Dai Nippon's international sales representatives sat opposite Prabhupada. Prabhupada presented his price, $1.35 per book. "Oh, Your Divine Grace," one of the salesmen exclaimed, "it's not possible for us to give this price. We will lose too heavily. We cannot afford it." They explained the position, quoting paper costs and other expenses. Prabhupada began to speak about his mission. ISKCON's book distribution, he said, was a charitable work for the benefit of all humanity. ISKCON distributed these books for whatever donations people were able to make, and he received no profit or royalties. It was spiritual education, the most valuable literature. In any case, Prabhupada said in closing, "You deal with my secretary in this regard." And he sat back in his chair. The burden was on Tamal Krishna. Tamal Krishna began by saying that Prabhupada had been too kind because ISKCON could actually never pay such a high price. He then quoted a price 40 cents lower per book. Then Prabhupada scored. "Mr. Tamal," the salesmen were again upset. "Please reconsider your point." A polite argument ensued. Suddenly, Prabhupada interrupted, presenting himself as an impartial third party. He said he would settle the difference that had arisen between his secretary and the salesman. "I have heard both sides," he said. I feel that the price should be $1.25 per book. That's all." "Yes, Your Divine Grace," the salesman agreed. "That's right." So he wasn't ready to work for 135. Now he is going to do for 125. After further negotiations, Prabhupada agreed on a contract that included a reprint of Volume 1 and a first printing of volume 2 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 2 issues of Back to Godhead, a Hindi issue of Back to Godhead, and a new book, Shri Ishopanishad. ISKCON had to pay only $5,000 cash, and Dainyapan would deliver everything on credit. Prabhupada held a feast at his apartment for the Dainyapan executives who especially liked the samosas and pakoras. They presented Prabhupada with a watch and continued to see to his comfort during his stay in Tokyo. Prabhupada also met a Canadian-born Japanese boy, Bruce, who was seriously interested in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada invited him to come and join him in India. The boy eagerly agreed. So that ends chapter 31st. We can start chapter 32nd. India, Dancing White Elephants, Calcutta, August 29, 1970. For the first time in almost 3 years, Prabhupada returned to India, to Calcutta, his hometown. Although it was late and the journey from Tokyo had been 12 hours, Prabhupada felt happy as he descended the stairway from the airplane. Achyutananda and Jayapataka, who his only American disciples in India, were standing on the airfield. And as they saw him approaching in his saffron silk robes, they bowed down. Prabhupada smiled and embraced them. They ushered him to a flower-bedecked car and accompanied him to the terminal building, where he entered the VIP lounge. Some of Prabhupada's godbrothers and old Calcutta friends were present to receive him, and a kirtan party from the Chaitanya Mutt was chanting. So Chaitanya Mutt, see, Gaudiya Mutt, which was started by Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, just became too many fractions of it. So one was Chaitanya Mutt, another is Chaitanya Saraswat Mutt. Similarly, so many other mutts have become. The reception was large and festive. As the room resounded with Hare Krishna, Prabhupada took his seat. The sound of the kirtan, the many pictures of Krishna, and the smell of incense and jasmine flowers combined with Prabhupada's transcendental presence to transform the drab airport into a heavenly scene. Indians crowded forward to place flower garlands around Prabhupada's neck, and as the garlands piled higher, Prabhupada removed them, but the garlands kept coming, and again they piled up, almost covering Prabhupada's face. The American devotees watched in fascination as the Bengali brahmacharis played the mridangas with exotic rhythms. People in the crowd pressed in closer to touch Prabhupada's feet and ask his blessings, and Prabhupada smiled, seeming quite at home. When the kirtan ended, he began to speak. I'm coming back to the city after 3 years, Hare Krishna. I've been around the world and have found that happiness and peace cannot be established in this world by materialistic advancement. I've seen Japan, which is highly advanced in machines and technology, yet there is no real happiness there. But the people of India, even if they do not understand the significance of Sankirtan, they enjoy listening to it. My advice to the Indians is that if you advance only in science and technology without paying attention to Harinam, then you will remain forever backward. There is tremendous strength in Harinam. Reporter, you have said, and I quote, even communism, if it is without Krishna, is void. Why do you say that, Prabhupada? Why do you refer to communism in particular? Without Krishna consciousness, everything is void, whatever you do. Krishna must remain in the center. Whether you are a communist or capitalist or anything else, it doesn't matter. We want to see whether your activities are centered around Krishna. Reporter. Right now, there is too much turmoil in Bengal. What's your advice to us at this time, Prabhupada? My advice is to chant Hare Krishna. This is the piece of advice to both the capitalists and the communists. All animosity between them will cease completely and all their problems will be solved if they take this advice. The crowd, affirming Prabhupada's words, began to shout, Sadhu, Sadhu. So, West Bengal, especially Calcutta, has always been the center of problems. Prabhupada sat in the back seat on his way from the airport to the home of Mr. Das Gupta on the Hindustan Road. Outside the car window, the familiar scenes of Calcutta passed by. For the newcomers riding with him, however, Calcutta was foreign and unfamiliar, gone loitering cows and street dogs, small horses pulling huge loads, barefoot rickshawalas, open shops with exotic foods, dense crowds of pedestrians, the sultry heat and the incredible traffic. These, although familiar to Prabhupada, plunged the disciples who had flown with them into culture shock. While Krishna looked nervously at the driver, who swerved in and out of traffic, honking his horn. Prabhupada laughed softly. Kamal Krishna, how do you like this driving? Achyutanand and Jayapatak, however, were acclimatized to Calcutta and had learned to appreciate its culture. They had met high-class, cultured Bengalis who accepted them as sadhus despite their American birth. They had preached in many homes and had attracted curious crowds by chanting in public. They had not, however, achieved a solid foothold for Islam. But now Prabhupada had come to change that. He would preach wonderfully, just as he had done in America, and his disciples were eager to serve as his instruments. He would be their vital force, their inspiration, for he was empowered by Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada reached the home of Mr. Dasgupta at almost midnight. Many people wanted to see him, and when Devanand Maharaj tried to turn them away, Prabhupada said, no, no, let them come in. Prabhupada's sister Bhavtarini arrived with an array of special dishes she had cooked. We can't eat now, one of the sannyasis protested. It is late at night. No, Prabhupada said, we must eat everything. Whatever my sister cooks, we have to eat. This is our favorite activity. She likes to cook for me and feed me. Everyone must take prasad. The devotees at the Chaitanya Math had also cooked a feast. And as Prabhupada was honoring the prasadam prepared by his sister, the prasadam from the Chaitanya Math arrived. He took a little and induced his followers to eat sumptuously at midnight. But that was Prabhupada. He didn't want to say no to prasadam. See, this is the mood of devotees. They want to cook nicely for Krishna and for devotees to honor. And at the same time, when we have movies coming out where they say, no, cooking too much is not good, and this is only what the ladies do, this is not good. Yes, exploitation is bad, but cooking with love, that should be we should give pleasure to everybody. Anyway, we can stop here. See anybody has any questions?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, you all have safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.